Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. I'm here today with the one and only Arturo Dominguez. Who is Arturo Dominguez? Arturo Dominguez is an author, a writer, an activist, known on Twitter as Extreme Arturo. Listen, folks, follow this guy. Go to Medium, follow Extreme Arturo, because I'm going to tell you, if you want to learn about what's happening in today's world, in today's America, in today's hemisphere, listen to this guy, Arturo Dominguez. Welcome to Politics Done Right. How are you doing today, sir?
Man, great. Good to be here. Always love coming on the show.
Well, man, I love having you because, every time you're here, it's a learning experience. And today we intend to keep that flow up. Recently, by the way, our hearts go out because at the time of the taping of this program, at this point, there are 14 dead kids killed by gun in Uvalde, Texas, and one teacher. It is sad that we're seeing that. First of all, what's your first impressions on that? Before we get into any technicalities, Arturo, what's your first impressions?
My first impressions obviously, go out to the families. I can't imagine. I don't even want to think about it, but my heart goes out to the families for sure. But my first impression is, I've been focused a lot on extremism lately since a little while, about a month before, maybe a little longer, the Buffalo attack happened. I was, starting to issue warnings because of, seeing an increase in xenophobic rhetoric on the far right and things like that. What happened today, at the school, I don't know that, it's obviously some form of extremism, right? To get to that level, to somebody acting that way. But at some point it all ties back because there's so much extremist stuff going on out there. Well, we may never know what this guy's motivations are because apparently he was shot and killed. So, we know that it seems like, based on his name alone, my assumption, it seems like a Hispanic guy, 18-year-old. One of the things I talk about was how, what I've been talking about recently is how, like, Latinos and even some Black people and stuff, they get hooked in by some of this nationalism stuff, and get, I don't know, they get sucked in. They use different tactics to like draw on our people, and sometimes it works. So again, like, it screams extremism to me, but to what extent? Is it the extremism I track? I kind of doubt it. It's probably not the hate group type, civil war type. Maybe it was. I don't know. It's hard to tell.
The interesting thing about it is all, and I'm glad that you brought up that, it seems so far, based on just name alone, from what Greg Abbott put out there, according to what you were telling me that you saw on the news thus far, is that the name of the person seems like it would make him a Latino. We don't know for sure yet. We're speculating right now, and by the time we air this, we would probably know a few more details. But we can be general enough to say that we understand that even in this white supremacy type environment that we're living in because of what the right has been doing, that there is a certain percentage of folks, irrespective of race, that get drawn in And to put it
Right.
bluntly, Arturo, some feel it an honor that, well, I am the exception. They want me, and I become one
Right.
of their largest advocates. Your thoughts on that? Because that is what I have seen with a lot of Latinos lately, and believe it or not, many Black folk as well.
Yeah, well, my take on the deal is, it's in the White Latinos Don't Exist article. I hate to keep going back to that,
No, you
but damn it,
actually,
two
folks.
years
No,
ago,
wait a minute. Wait a minute. I mean, that's an important. That is
it
one of the
is
premier
actually.
pieces that you wrote, and I think a lot of people need to go back to that. So first of all, tell folks about that article that and where they need
Well,
to read it.
in that article, I wrote that maybe 2 years ago, close to
Yeah.
it, something like that. Anyway, in that article, I was basically calling out, Latinos that act like white supremacists, say racist stuff, all these things, and the whole point of it was based on what I see from hate groups and extremists, my lived experiences in Texas, where people's like all the time, "Oh, I thought you were white," and there's reasons for that. That and it's in the Shooter's Manifesto. Like he even says it. You can be white looking, but you're not culturally white. And so, since I'm walking around, I'm Cuban. I make it well known I'm Cuban. I'm proud Cuban. I eat Cuban food. I act Cuban like crazy. So, obviously, I don't fit the white type. So, like for them, they're like, "Oh, I thought you were white," and because I speak Spanish and stuff, all of a sudden I'm not. Even though last time I checked, you know, I look pretty freaking white, right? But um, so yeah, when I say that white Latinos don't exist, I kind of say in the sense I'm saying that they can't, because in American society, like, even people on the street like, "Oh, I thought you were white," and then you got the Shooter in the Manifesto about, you could be culturally white like Enrique Tarrio, but since he's black, he'll never be white. He even uses an example of like say a black guy that was born in France. His family's been there many generations. Like, he may be French and he may be culturally white, but he's still, from the sub-Saharan Africa, whatever he put in the manifesto. So that, he might be culturally white, but he can't be white because, of his skin color. So, and that's where, like, the Shooters Manifesto, same with hate groups, same with white people in general. That's sort of where they draw the line. It's, to be white, you have to be like directly of European descent. Even though some of us in Latin America have you come from European descent, that doesn't count because we're being filtered through Latin America first. So you see what I'm saying? Like, we
Oh,
speak
I get it.
Spanish.
I
So,
lived it. I'm from Panama. Yo soy
right,
Latino. I
right.
mean, I get
It's
it.
weird. It's weird, man. It's really weird, but that's how they hook them in. Like, the Proud Boys used male chauvinism. That they targeted black dudes with that. They targeted Latino dudes with that. That's how they got Enrique Tarrio.
Hmm.
And it's all about putting the man up above the women. It's exactly what they say it is, male chauvinism. And that's how they hook a lot of our people in, and they don't realize that they're promoting like white supremacist ideals and stuff. Like, Enrique Tarrio never calls it white supremacy. He calls it Western culture or Western society, but we know
Yeah.
what he means. I
Yeah.
mean, you know what I mean? So, like, anytime anybody talk about like, "Oh man, they're coming down on white people, this, that, and the other," you'd see Enrique Tarrio comment on Telegram. He'd say, "Oh, they hate us," and I'm like, "Bro, what do you mean us? Like, you darker than the rest of these fools. You're not white, bro. Like, I mean, they might have told you were, but okay, whatever." So yeah, I mean, our people buy into that, and you get in it, you stay in it long enough, and you start believing all that, like Enrique Tarrio, excuse my French, but you start believing all that stuff, and it puts people in a bad way. And like, I mean, they turned on Tario. They called him the token Negro. They called him all kinds of stuff. Like, "We're not going to have that anymore." And I was like, "Damn, guys, don't be nice about it." Hell, like they went full blown racist, and I was like, "That's what
And
you
he was
get."
one of
That's
them.
right, right, and he was one of them, and that's what I tell people. Eventually, they're gonna come for you, dude. Like, why are you taking sides with them? Like, I don't get it, So I try to call it out, and I know, I track extremists and stuff. I see what they're doing, you know, and I like to talk about the intersection of politics and racism and stuff. So all of that kind of goes together. You know, you can't not, you know, investigate rhetoric and dog whistles and not get into politics, because that's where it's used the most, you know. So, you know, the Klan uses dog whistles, things like that. But then when you got politicians using them too, you know, we're starting to have more problems, you know, and they create bigger problems because they have big platforms, you know, they spread that message so far and so wide. So I think that's where we are in society today. A lot of people buy into that.
Now, in your piece, Ethnonationalism, did you take into account that when we look at the psychology of people, really leads them into the thought process that just maybe, you know, they're invisible, that they'll be seen differently?
Yeah, you know, it's sort of like, you know, when we talk about allyship with white people, right, on the civil rights aspect, right, you know, Black Lives Matter movement, all that stuff, you know, for them, that's what this is. It's in the opposite, you know, spectrum.
Right.
So, you know, they treat them as allies. They, you know, invite them over for dinner. They, you know, socialize. They, you know, make them one of them. And they're useful tools, because they, you know, the Proud Boys could sit there and say, oh, look, we're not racist. Our chairman's an Afro-Cuban.
Yeah.
How can he possibly be racist? And that fool was racist as hell. So, you know, so yeah, like, you know, they become more of a tool, to basically just send out a mixed message, to try to cover their own tracks, to try to throw people off. And, you know, when the Proud Boys are saying that they're, you know, here to protect Western society and these blah blah values, chauvinist, whatever. I'm not going to get into all that, but yeah, when they try to promote that, I mean, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about white supremacy. You know, they say colonialism is the best thing that ever happened to the West. Like, come on, man. Like,
You know,
really?
it is interesting because I wrote a piece a few days ago, actually, and the title of the piece that I wrote was actually called "My Message to Those Who Believe Challenging the Fallibility of the West is a War on the West." Right?
Right. I read that.
And the idea behind that was, you know, we have given these guys agency of
Yeah.
where it doesn't belong. In other words, what is the Western world, right? Who created the Western world? I mean, folks like to activist white is Western world and vice versa, and not realizing that the Western world is it's really the coalition of the attainments, the intellect, and everything of people from all over. The colonizer then colonized and imparted. The colonizer colonized and took. It
Right.
took knowledge. It took technology. It took all these things. If we go technology after, you know, it's amazing because you'd hear things like, I've never seen a thing somebody of whatever culture develop. And then you start looking at things and you say, well, let me see. The Chinese did gunpowder. The first open
Right.
heart surgery was done by a black dude in South Africa.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you start naming all these things and you realize that no culture, no race has a monopoly on intellect, a monopoly on intelligence, a monopoly on any of these things, right?
Right.
But
Right.
we let them slide. Like this guy went on Joe Scarborough, and he started to say, yeah, we need to examine that we did bad things, but we did some bad things, but there are great things that we did that made this world a better place. And you know, I haven't answered him yet, but a guy came on to, he left a note. I think it's a black guy actually left a note trying to explain to me why capitalism and all these things, the trajectory is actually good. When I'm saying, I am sorry, the trajectory is not good. The
Right.
trajectory is to take more power from you. We've learned how to do it antiseptically,
Right.
you know. So I mean, your thoughts on this glorification on this false Western world that never really existed?
You know, and I've actually put thought into this because, if I'm ever in a situation where, I'm having a discussion with a Proud Boy, for example, about Western civilization, you know, um, how do they justify the genocide of how many peoples? You know what I mean? Just taking people's histories and names and cultures, in the slave trade, they wiped out so many. I mean, we're still doing it. So I mean, the colonialism expansion is still happening in Latin America. So
Yes.
so I mean, they're taking land from indigenous people, wiping out their culture. That's cultural genocide is genocide. I mean, you're taking away their entire histories and stuff.
Hmm.
So I mean, to say that there's value in that because we have paved roads, like, man, the Romans had paved roads, the Egyptians had paved roads. Like, there was paved roads long time before, quote unquote white people. So yeah, I mean, it's such a just it's a false, like, it's an argument that really doesn't have any merit. And the thing is, there's a guy in 2014, right? He tried to reform the KKK, tried to get people of color recruited in there, and this was like in Michigan or something like that. And the language that he used in 2014 is the exact same language the Proud Boys use. So, he said that this is more about nationalism, about basically it's America first, things like that. And again, I don't know, America first is just more unfettered capitalism, basically. But
Yes.
um, as far as how these hate groups push it, I mean, you see it like when they use propaganda in Cuba, right? They promote capitalism like it's infallible, right? Like there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. But they never tell you about how many people living on the street here, something they don't have in Cuba. They don't tell you about the 12 million kids that don't know where their next meal's coming from. This whole capitalism is so good, and colonialism is so good. It's just it's a logical fallacy. You know what I mean? The whole argument turns on itself the minute you challenge it. And I guess that's probably why they don't let many people challenge them.
I am glad that you made that comment. That's why they don't make people challenge it, because when I'm doing my program and I'm inside of my room, we have to listen to a lot of folks on the right say things like capitalism may not as good as you want it to be, but it has taken more people out of poverty than any other system. To which I also say, and it has killed more people and put more people in poverty than any other system as well. I mean, what I try to do with a program, and I think you do a lot with your writing, is to try to open people's eyes. If you look, if it takes a mess on the outside to create a smooth running America, an America of milk and honey, while that kid in Venezuela is providing what he cannot provide for the penance he gets, while that kid that is digging up diamonds in Zaire, while that kid that is getting bauxite in Jamaica, so that we can have beautiful aluminum foil that's manufactured here, where the added
Right.
value doesn't go to those who mine it. I mean, there
Right.
are all these things that capitalism actually does that Americans themselves don't see it. So it's easy for them to just say it's the best system since apple pie,
Right.
forgetting that we invaded Haiti and controlled Haiti for 20 years, charged them, charged them for their invasion,
Right.
you
For
know?
their freedom. Yeah.
And no, well, in the case of Haiti, France charged Haiti, I mean, them for their free.
Yeah.
I sit
Yeah.
down there and I am actually, there's a great article. I had known about it before. There's a great article in the New York Times called Ransom. There's a series out, started yesterday.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. I saw it. I saw it. Yeah.
And it is amazing. I mean, it's a long read and it's a multiple. I've only gone through probably 20% of it. But the truth of the matter is the gall of these people, and the reason they get away with it is, like I tell you all the time when we're not on air, they don't read enough of your stuff. They don't read enough of my stuff. They don't read enough of stuff
Right.
that other people are out there telling the truth, right? saying
Right,
these are
right.
how things really are. So what do you think about, how do we try to mitigate this?
Well, capitalism can't function without the exploitation of labor at some point, right?
Hmm.
It started with the enslaved, and when they couldn't do that anymore, they incarcerated them and they do the, leasing out convict labor. But then on a colonialism level, you have everything you just discussed.
Yeah.
You have these kids, mining diamonds that are, they're not reaping the reward of that final sale. That doesn't make that kid rich.
Right.
He finds one, he gets a little chunk of change, and then he has to go find another one.
Yep.
So and a lot of parts of Latin America, it's that way too. So yeah, that's the biggest problem with capitalism that I see, is that with unfettered capitalism, I should say, because it can't function without exploited labor. It has
Hmm.
to have exploited labor. We have migrants in the fields here. We have migrants in the field in Brazil. We have migrants in the field everywhere. So yeah, and when it comes to countries like Cuba and Venezuela, it's because they can't exploit it. So they try to make sure they fail. So
Uh,
they tried it with Bolivia.
you just said something magical there, right? Because I try to preach that on our program. Most of the people on my program, they have been taught to hate Hugo Chavez. And I knew about Hugo Chavez from its inception. I knew about Hugo Chavez when he tried to create the United States of South America. I mean, I know Hugo Chavez when Hugo Chavez was trying to create a currency that many people use down there. Hugo Chavez was the banker of choice for Brazil, Argentina, and a few others when the petrodollars were running. So the problem that America has with Venezuela is one they will never tell you. And I want you to posit this. Venezuela is sitting on the largest pool of oil in the world at this point in time. They don't talk about it much. They don't talk
Right.
about it much anymore. But they're sitting on the largest pool of oil in the world. And it is a socialist state, of which it means that the oil, unlike America, where if you're lucky enough today to buy a piece of land that has mineral rights, you can get a royalty for the
Right.
oil company taking your oil out, but they make most of the money. You can, if it's on public lands, you make niet,
Right.
nothing. The oil companies drill and sell your oil. There used to be a thing called a depletion allowance, and there were all these technicalities that
Yeah. Yeah.
you used to that these guys use, and they make a windfall on oil that should belong to who again? All of us.
Right.
How does it look if you have a Venezuela sitting on the largest amount of oil with it belonging to the people, and when it exploited, you get a lot of people that I don't know if you remember in the beginnings of the Hugo Chavez days, people were starting to form their own. All the people in Venezuela had their little shops on the road and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
And
and
then
go ahead.
go ahead. Oh
No,
no. And
please.
then came the U.S. and the sanctions and the cut them off from the world markets and all that stuff. So you can't. My thing with the U.S. foreign policy in Latin America, especially, you can't declare Cuba a failed state when you've been, had your boot on their neck for 60 years.
Right.
You want to declare it a failed state, let it fail. Like, lift all the sanctions. I dare you to lift all the sanctions and let it fail. And I promise you it won't. And that's what scares them. That's what scares them. A socialist
Exactly.
paradise 90 miles away is going to scare the daylights out of them. And, I'm not saying that, that's the kind of government I want, but, you can have capitalist driven socialist type economy very easily. I don't see why we pay taxpayers. This is where it gets me, because this is like Biden's infrastructure bill is a big giveaway to corporations and stuff. It's
Right.
going to privatize all our roads. They're going to put tolls all over our roads. So like now, we just, unleashed trillion whatever dollars for infrastructure. So we're paying for that, and then we're going to have to pay to use it.
Thank you.
Getting that right, and that's the privatization. That's unfettered capitalism. That's wealth extraction from the population to the. I mean, that's colonialist behavior. Like That's dictator type stuff where they just suck you dry piece by piece and send that money up. And it's ridiculous because you know how it is here in Houston. They built the Beltway, the San Houston Tollway, and after so many years of tolls, it's going to pay for itself, and then it'll be free. Well, now the county is dependent on that money, and it'll never be free. So we're going to forever pay for that and pay to use it. So it's and you know it disproportionately impacts poor people too. These toll roads are for people who can afford it. You know, poor people, where are they stuck? They're stuck on the feeder roads and on surface streets where all the smog is and all the pollution is. So, you know, it opens up the door to this environmental racism and things. So like it's a huge ripple effect that goes, you know, it goes, you know, down on us, and then all the money goes to the top. So it's a rigged system, you know, like we built the internet infrastructure, right? And we have to pay to use it. We have to pay access fees. We have to pay a third party to get us a cell phone and provide us access to, you know, their towers. They all lease the same towers from each other. So like nobody has a bigger map, you know, everybody has the same stuff. So it's like, you know, and it's all oligopolies is what they call them, you know, because since it's not a monopoly, you have 3 companies running every industry. They can fix prices, they can do, you know, all that stuff. And all it does is prey on the poor disproportionately more than everyone else.
You know, and that is a word that we have to get out, because the truth of the matter is these people have they have the fund, they control the media, they have the funds to fund the media and and be able to tell the story that they want to tell. Now, we'll be right back with Arturo Dominguez. Politics Done Right depends on you to keep doing what we do. What do? We make sure to keep, number one, the internet seeded with blogs and information to counter the right and to present what progressives represent for the benefit of us all to everybody, so that it's not misread, misled by any other entity. We make sure and populate that internet with blogs, with videos, with all these other things to make sure that we are informed and to counter everything that you normally hear that are lying at the right. We also make sure to create articles in magazines, articles in newspapers all around the country to ensure, again, that our message gets out there. Last but not least, we also write books. As you see it, Class Warfare, the Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom, How to Make America Utopia, are 2 of the many books that I've written on these issues. So please support us in one of many ways. Numero uno, you can support us at PayPal, either one time or monthly. Go to politicsdoneright.com/PayPal. You can support us on Patreon. That is politicsdoneright.com/Patreon. Patreon is spelled Patreon. You can support us by becoming a part of our YouTube channel, going to politicsdoneright.com/YouTube, or you can support us in many other forms that you can find at politicsdoneright.com/support. Be sure to visit our store, politicsdoneright.com/store, and get our books at politicsdoneright.com/books. Here's Arturo again. Now we have to try harder in the way that we tell the story, because when America, you know, I always said that one of my biggest fears is when those who continue to vote against their interests realize that they've been had. And unfortunately, they are armed.
Yeah, and you know, it's tricky because the people that are voting against their interest are voting based on, you know, biases, racism. By they're basing it on, you know, oh, we're being invaded at the southern border, which, you know, clearly we're not, because it's not an armed battalion. You know what I mean? Like, come on now, there's no invasion, okay? So, yeah, you know, that's what people on the right, that's what it is now, you know. I said that in that ethno-nationalism is the new conservatism for Latino rebels. That's what it is, you know. Conservatism nowadays is really based, and I'm not saying every conservative is like this, but the platform, the politicians, the rhetoric, the just nonsense. Every time I hear some political ad and I hear the left or something in the ad, I just laugh. I'm like, Jesus Christ, people buy this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I heard my brother do the Let's Go Brandon thing or something, like when he was here a couple weeks ago. I was like, really? Like, you fell for that? Like, I mean, who cares
Were
about?
you able to talk to him, or you weren't able to?
Yeah, you know, we talked a little bit, but he really didn't want to talk much. So I'm guessing he probably just didn't want to be challenged. But
Right.
they're supposed to be coming over. I'm probably going to see him again soon. So, you know,
But we all have our right-wing relatives. I have one sister that is actually a right-winger, and I always, you know, when she comes to Texas, I always say, you know, I would like to leave you in Viter at night, you know.
No way, dude.
Leave you at Viter,
No.
Texas at night, you know.
No way.
And see how people feel about you out there, you know.
Yeah, that's scary. That's
Yeah,
scary.
you know, I even for what's his name with the Proud Boys, what's his name? Enrique Tario.
Tario.
Put Tario in Viter, Texas at night alone.
Man, yeah,
you know?
that changes mine. That would change his
Oh
mind
yeah,
real quick.
I think
real quick.
Put what's her name? The girl
Candace Owens.
Candace Owens. Put them there, you know. Put them there. And I tell you better than that. Let her go over, go to Viter, Texas, and hug her very nice husband, and see what happens. You know.
Man, yeah, that would change their mind. You know, drop them off anywhere, basically in East Texas. Like, you know, that's not a city. That's not a city. I mean, you know, there's a lot of places all in the piney woods over there, and it's kind of creepy. It's creepy.
I used to ride in the piney woods. I made sure there were 4 white guys around me when I ride when I cycle, and they knew it. We had fun with it. We had fun with. Well, like Berto, you know, you got to keep up with us now. You know?
That's funny.
Don't let us have to leave you out here, Egberto. Hey, I bet the adrenaline will start flowing then, brothers.
Yeah, right.
You're my white brothers.
Yeah, no kidding.
Because, but serious, you know, look, look, we are going to change this, but right now, that stuff, 3 steps ahead, 2 steps back, 3 steps ahead, 1 step back. I mean, we backslide some, we go up, and right now we're in that backsliding thing. And the thing about it is, if we don't arrest it soon, we have to be careful that the backslide doesn't go back to previous territory. You know.
Yeah, you know, that's one of the things that worries me. You know, particularly with, you know, extremist language coming from politicians. Like, you know, Ali said in a talk recently that Black men are killed by police more frequently than they were lynched from back in the day. You know,
who said that?
Lynching Allison.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
And you know, and it's true. And you know, that shocks me because what qualifies as a lynching, right? I wrote an article, What Defines a Lynching, a while back. And, you know, I always reference Ibram X. Kendi's article in The Atlantic from 2019 called A Lynch Mob of One. And in that article, he talks about exactly what happened in Buffalo. You got a guy with a high-powered rifle, could fire rounds at a rapid rate, killing Black people. And he's essentially a lynch mob of one. And the only thing he needs is that one weapon. To me, and I dare not throw that word out there too, you know, loosely because of what happened. And out of respect for the families, I try to be careful about what I say. But there's a lot of things we really, really have to address. And this, I think, is one of them. In the anti-lynching bill, is there a provision in there that says that what happened in Buffalo qualifies as a lynching? Because he went to hunt Black people.
Yes.
That was his motivation. Wasn't a damn toothache. It was, he went to hunt Black people. He drove 4 hours, whatever, I mean, there was some serious intent there. So that's a lynching, man. That is a lynching. And I've felt that way about Dylan Roof. You know, had there been a lynching bill, would he have been charged for lynching? Or is lynching only defined as what it used to be
with the string,
or
with the rope?
what people commonly think? Like, you know, Emmett Till was lynched. He wasn't hung from a tree, right? So why does that? We don't need a pre-qualifier. We need the motivation. The motivation was for the Buffalo shooter, the Buffalo terrorist. The motivation was to kill Black people en masse. That to me qualifies as a lynching crime. As it's definitely a hate crime, obviously, but whatever is in the anti-lynching bill, which I haven't really had a chance to read, because, you know, I have my opinions on that too, but I don't know if that qualifies, you know, under that kind of language, but it should.
It should qualify. I mean, technically speaking, it should qualify, because I mean, and actually it's pretty much, it's worse, right? One is, you know, because you can do it so fast.
And so right. I mean, this guy, you know, you can't say it was economic anxiety that drove him to do this, or, you know, the suggestion of the toothache that went viral on Twitter the other day. You can't make that argument when the guy had $5,000 worth of gear in his car.
And a manifesto.
And a manifesto. And he came from a, you know, relatively wealthy neighborhood, you know, from what I understand. And it wasn't, you can't claim economic anxiety. I mean, come on, man. The motivation there was clear. The manifesto is pretty freaking clear. And if he got away, he was going to shoot up a school. That's what scares me, was, you know, if he got away, he was going to shoot up a school. Now this dude shoots up a school.
Yeah, he finished his job, right?
If there's a connection there, I'm going to shit myself.
No,
sorry for cussing.
No,
but yeah, no, if there's a connection there, that's going to be very alarming, I think. And it should be a shock to the system if the country doesn't see it already. I'm amazed that only 8 days after the Buffalo shooting, we're not even talking about extremism anymore.
You wrote an article on that. You wrote an article titled "Days After a Racist Terrorist Attack, Society is Ready to Move On." Tell us a little bit about that, because I mean, I think Americans need to see how this stuff is getting too normalized right now.
Yeah, and that's the problem. And it's normalized to the point where, you know, a shooting happened, everybody's shocked, but that shock wears off a little bit faster every time.
I want to read something from your piece, because this is touching. This is important. Okay. You say, this is from Arturo Dominguez article titled "Day After Racist Terrorist Attack, Society is Ready to Move On." He did it, actually it was written today, and he said the following. I've had it here, the piece that I had highlighted that I wanted to cover. Bear with me 1 second, because it was prescient. We should not applaud. Let's see. Bear with me, folks. It's a good one. Anyhow, let's keep talking as I find the piece that I want.
So yeah, you know, basically, you know, I'm trying to keep the conversation out there. I really, really am. I'm in a position where, you know, I have knowledge, you know, and experience here, a little over a decade of actively tracking extremists and the beginning of the alt-right to where we are now, and watching the evolution of it. And I think that people aren't taking things like the manifesto seriously enough.
And that's where this comes in. Where you say, here is what Arturo, you say on this article: lone wolves are a myth. White men are radicalized by the words and deeds of those that came before them. They associate with specific crowds and discuss extremist ideas and express their hate for non-white people. They then spread their fundamentalist ideas to the general public via social media channels that allow them to operate unabated, inciting one another to commit hateful acts against non-white communities, whether verbal, physical, or outright murder. To use language that was used against Muslim, they're terrorist cells. And I love how you associate that. These are terrorist cells, and
They
we should
absolutely are.
treat them as such.
They absolutely are. You're not going to convince me the Buffalo shooter's a lone wolf. You're not going to convince me any of these shooters are lone wolves. They're being radicalized somewhere. They have connections somewhere. This school shooter today has a connection somewhere. Somebody helped radicalize this guy. It didn't happen by itself, so somebody started opening the doors and opening their eyes. So if it was, and I hate to bring up Tucker Carlson, because I feel like talking about Tucker Carlson and Fox News is sort of sweeping the issue under the rug, because it's so much deeper than that. But if this guy saw Tucker Carlson talk about the Great Replacement Theory, for example, I'm not saying it's associated with that, but let's say the Buffalo shooter, the Great Replacement Theory, say he got his information from Tucker Carlson, even though he didn't. Say he got it from that. Then he goes online and there's troves of information that seemingly validate what Tucker Carlson says. It's all bull, but some of them look like actual studies. You got the Center for Immigration Studies that, Southern Poverty Law Center says are a hate group. And I concur, they're a freaking hate group. They're part of the John Tanton network or whatever, however you say that guy's name. That guy was a big believer in the Great Replacement Theory and things like that, and wanted to, lock down the country from immigration and stuff. So they produce studies that flat out lie, but they validate things that Tucker Carlson says. So I think it's a big issue that people are just not discussing, and you have to look deeper than what it is. And if some people read the manifesto, they'd be shocked, because I assure you that's what their conservative family members sound like. Maybe they're not.
I didn't read it yet. Did you read the whole manifesto? What is it?
Yeah,
168 pages.
180. Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, as far as readable content, because there's a lot of pages that are just memes that are full of memes.
Okay.
Anti-Semitic stuff, a lot of that. But if you read through the thing, it might take you a little while. It's probably, I would say, probably more like 110 or 120 pages worth of reading. But I read it a couple times, and I've been searching through it every time I think of a key phrase I want to, reference, see if he mentions it, what his views are about it, and try to, cross-reference that with some of the stuff we're seeing on hate group channels, things, and trying to see if these, I try to draw a connection to where these ideas start, how these people get radicalized, young white men get radicalized. It starts very basic, and it grows. And I don't recommend looking at the memes. They're just really hateful and
right.
But you see the progression in the memes where they go from something seemingly benign to something just outright horrible, so yeah, it's a gradual progression, how these guys get drawn in, and I think it's an issue that the country's not taking seriously enough.
Mm-hmm.
It's an issue that we can't rely on the federal government, the Department of Justice, the FBI. We can't rely on them, because they can't do anything until an actual criminal act is
right,
occurs. And unfortunately, for 2 in 10 days resulted in 24 people dead. So it's the best way to confront the issue is by addressing the people in our proximity. I have a brother, I confront him, I make sure like, he ain't going to be the next mass shooter. What bothers me is that he's on the internet, and maybe he convinces the next mass shooter. Maybe he sends the next one down the rabbit hole. Maybe you're that uncle at Christmas that you want to avoid. Maybe he's on the internet. He might be the one that triggers the next shooter. Because when you're gone, when they go home, they're back online talking their stuff. So when I see people that are like somewhat influential, like I went after that radio DJ a couple years ago, AM radio talk show guy, wannabe Rush Limbaugh. He was saying some pretty derogatory stuff about Latinos, and I called him on it, wrote an article about him. I trolled him for days. And the point was to let him know that, that I'm out here, that I can chase you down. I can bother you. I can listen to your show. I can tweet about it in real time. I can, really mess with his head. And he started blocking me everywhere, but I still kept doing it because I knew that the radio station could still see.
Right.
And he controlled their social media. So I was tagging the radio station, and that, he's not allowed to block people on that page. So, the point is to let them know that it's unacceptable and that there are people out here that aren't going to let it happen. And somebody like me who has, who's been allowed to participate, but Julio, gave me space on Latino Rebels to be able to use that platform and put him on blast. I'm going to use that. So some people like it, some people hate it, but it is what it is. You just can't let that stuff, go on. So, I've done the same thing with the AM radio DJs in Miami. They spread a lot of misinformation.
And you go,
they broadcast live, right, on Facebook, and I'll get on there and I start posting comments, and it pops up on the screen, so everybody who's watching it via social media, you can see my comment. I don't say anything offensive, or I challenge them.
You just tell the truth.
Right. I challenged them, and they started to know who I am. And then I wrote an article about them and Latino Rebels. And I think it was Hector who put the picture of the one lady, Inoska, that I was messing with on Facebook. He put her picture of the article. I was like, oh man, she's going to be real mad now. And so I listened to her show, waiting for her to blast me and stuff. And she didn't. So I was like, but I was,
you know what she did know? She did know that she gave you notoriety, people would start listening to you and say, I wonder what is Arturo saying? Is it
right?
And
that's the thing. Like I said with the Proud Boys, the minute you they don't want to be challenged. My brother don't want to be challenged. Ninoska don't want to be challenged. None of them want to be challenged, and they'll try to ignore you as much as possible until you go away. So I mean, we have to be more active as a society in general. Like I always say that this extremism issue is largely a white people issue, because most shooters are white, and most of these extremists, people yelling at Mexicans speak English, or threatening, black people, or this and that, even if it's just verbal harassment, these things we have to take it seriously, because 75% of the attacks on Asian people are from white men. But if you look online, the narrative is, oh, black people are attacking Asians, and they're trying to use these things as, in an anti-black effort. Right. And the reality is 75% of the attacks are by white men. So, we white people, I say that all the time, but it's steadily, when I start talking about ethno-nationalism, it's because it's starting to become a black people issue, a Latino issue, because these guys are starting to embrace that male chauvinist, that, there is some appeal to the America first, want to take care of your country first. They play that angle hard.
And it's but Arturo, it's also as a black man, as a Latino, as a Caribbean man, who the struggles that you have to go through. When one of these groups want to sort of put you, Tario, just think about him. He feels like he's in a position of power, something that he could not attain in any one likely of his own groups, but there, because he's special.
That's a good point.
You see what I'm saying?
That's
and
a good
there's
point.
Something about, even when we look at Candace Owens and those folks, they like being the minority of minorities because they feel special. It's not that they feel like there's something about them that's different. I remember, and I tell this, and after this, I'll ask you to tell us a little bit about how folks can read it, about all the great stuff that you're out there writing. But I just want to tell a quick story. I mean, I'm black, I'm Latino, I have an accent, all that good stuff. And I remember many a times I would go to different places, and unless I open my mouth or speak Spanish, everybody looks at me as just a African American brother, right? And I remember a white guy saying, "Oh, you're different," and they were trying to make it, give me that impression of being, I'm different, so I can be sort of in the club. I mean, and deep inside, I know what was going on, because I know a lot of brothers, African American or otherwise, that take that in as like, I'm getting that special treatment, I'm special. For me, it was an insult, right?
Yeah.
And I
Right.
took it as such. And I told him straight up, I'm like, when you see me, that African American brother you see there, you see me. That Afro Latino you see from Cuba
Right.
or from the Dominican Republic or from Costa Rica, Honduras, or Guatemala, you're seeing me.
Right.
Okay? So don't think there's nothing special about me. I just happen to land on a different shore.
Yeah. That's a great way to put it.
You see what I'm saying? That's all. I just happen to drop on a different shore. But other than, if you don't like that folk, there's something about me you can't like either.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So I try to. The thing about it is, it's not only white people you have to convince about that. It's Black Americans you have to convince about that as well, because they know the dynamics that white supremacists try to place in between. Let's say they're born African, the Latino, Afro-Latino, the Black, the African American, and the truth of the matter is, it always seems like the African American get the short end of the stick.
Right.
You know. But
Absolutely.
anyhow, Arturo Dominguez, please take some time. I want folks to. First of all, let me just tell you, I love your writing. You do not hold back. You are frank. You are honest. And I think you are one that everybody should be reading. Sometime you're going to get people upset.
Yeah.
But if you're not doing that, you're not making people think. And I think you make people think. So tell us all about the different ways people can get to your writings, to your literature.
Well, I mean, use Extreme Arturo. You could pretty much find me anywhere. It's Extreme Arturo on Substack, on Medium, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I'm all over there. Trying to get the Substack thing going. So, to appreciate some follows over there, because I know a lot of people are on Substack these days. Trying to promote work, man, trying to get stuff done, hopefully get some paying subscribers.
So folks, please, if you look up Extreme Arturo and go to his Substack, and if you have the wherewithal, become a paid subscriber. Likewise, do the same on Medium. If you go to Medium and find Extreme Arturo, you can also get a membership, and that don't only give you access to Arturo's work, it gives you access to my work and all of us who publish at Substack and the other places. But please, we need to support journalists and writers that are not pushing the line of the mainstream. It is so important for us to do that. It is important for us to hear the different voices that are out there so that we can actually know what's going on. So please look out for Extreme Arturo and do all you can to support the man's writing. Arturo Dominguez, as usual, it's been my pleasure to have you on Politics Done Right, sir.
Pleasure as well, as always. Love being here. Thanks, man.
Thank you, brother. America is purported to be a democracy. That's what we all love to say, and we preach it. Yet most Americans want some sort of gun control, some sort of background check, and all these different things that would save lives. But because we have a country in which it's not really a democracy, where the Republicans can actually, in their minority status for decades, control the agenda with obstructionism and much other very undemocratic things, that's what we get. Well, you know what's interesting? Here we continuously have these mass killings, and we just seem to be able to do absolutely nothing about it. And if you want to see why, I want you to listen to how Mitch McConnell catered the debate, how Mitch McConnell said, this is what we are working on to solve the problems. And then check out how it's done in Australia, how it is done in Canada. They've had issues. And you know what's amazing? How it's done in California, right here in the United States of America. Check this out, then we'll take it on the other side.
Senator McConnell, any comments on the gun control issue going on right now? You had said possibly that you were open to
what we're
some...
doing, we have a the group led by Senator Cornyn and Senator Murphy on the Democratic side, discussing how we might be able to come together to target the problem, which is mental illness and school safety. We'll get back at it next week and hope to have some results.
Yeah, you'll note he said mental illness and school safety, nothing about gun control. But that is Senator Mitch McConnell last hour in Kentucky. He is someone President Biden just called a rational Republican. And while Biden hopes for a rational response from Congress, his counterpart to the north is proposing new gun laws. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau introducing legislation to impose a national freeze on handgun sales in response to a spike in homicides in his country.
We recognize that the vast majority of gun owners use them safely and in accordance with the law. But other than using firearms for sport shooting and hunting, there is no reason anyone in Canada should need guns in their everyday lives. And Canadians certainly don't need assault-style weapons that were designed to kill the largest number of people in the shortest amount of time.
That announcement by Trudeau comes 2 years after the deadliest mass shooting in Canadian history, when police say a gunman in Nova Scotia killed 22 people with a gun purchased here in the U.S., in Maine. Canada almost immediately banned assault weapons. Meanwhile, President Biden just wrapped up a meeting today with the Prime Minister of New Zealand. New Zealand passed stricter gun laws 3 years ago in the wake of a mass shooting at a mosque there less than a month earlier. And while we continue to see other countries quickly pass stricter gun laws, we're also seeing individual states here in the U.S. address the country's gun violence epidemic. As the L.A. Times reports, gun deaths dropped in California as they rose in Texas. Gun control seems to work. It says, quote, California's rate of gun deaths has declined by 10% since 2005, even as the national rate has climbed in recent years. And Texas and Florida, their rates of gun deaths have climbed 28% and 37%, respectively.
So therefore, if you have any doubt whatsoever, what we actually are looking at, we have countries that are behaving like adults, and then we have the United States, who is governed by a Republican Party who represents a clear and present danger to us all. We have to ask the question, is that what we really want? Is that who we really are? Folks, let's get busy and get the bombs out. You can listen and or watch Politics Done Right Mondays through Fridays on Facebook Live at facebook.com/Politics Done Right or on YouTube Live at politicsdoneright.com/YouTube. Please do not forget to follow me on Twitter for updates. My Twitter handle is @EgbertoWillies. Politics Done Right depends on you to keep doing what we do. What do? We make sure to keep, number one, the internet seeded with blogs and information to counter the right and to present what progressives represent for the benefit of us all to everybody, so that it's not misread, misled by any other entity. We make sure and populate that internet with blogs, with videos, with all these other things to make sure that we are informed and to counter everything that you normally hear that are lying at the right. We also make sure to create articles in magazines, articles in newspapers all around the country to ensure, again, that our message gets out there. Last but not least, we also write books. As you see it, Class Warfare, the only resort to right-wing doom, How to Make America Utopia, are two of the many books that I've written on these issues. So please support us in one of many ways. Numero uno, you can support us at PayPal, either one time or monthly. Go to politicsdoneright.com/PayPal. You can support us on Patreon. That is politicsdoneright.com/Patreon. Patreon is spelled Patreon. You can support us by becoming a part of our YouTube channel, going to politicsdoneright.com/YouTube, or you can support us in many other forms that you can find at politicsdoneright.com/support. Be sure to visit our store, politicsdoneright.com/store, and get our books at politicsdoneright.com/books. books.
Well, folks, that's it for today. You know how I'm going to end this baby. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you know how I end this baby. I am what?